In 1835, the still fairly young Episcopal Church decided it needed to have a presence in the Western territories to address the growing spiritual needs on the American frontier. In order to do this, they came up with the idea of consecrating missionary bishops to head out into the wilderness to plant churches and schools. Shockingly, very few clergy were excited about the prospect of leaving the creature comforts of the East Coast, their soft beds, warm fireplaces, and decanters full of sherry, for the harsh conditions out on the frontier. But a New Yorker who served a parish in Philadelphia answered the call, and Jackson Kemper was consecrated as the first missionary bishop of the Episcopal Church. A couple weeks ago, Jackson Kemper popped up on the Episcopal Church's calendar of saints, and we remembered him at our weekly Wednesday service in the chapel. He's actually one of my very favorite figures of the early church in America, and I thought about him again this week because the gospel appointed for his feast day is the very same one that we heard this morning, what's known as the Great Commission. At the very end of Matthew's gospel, Jesus gathers the disciples together and says, "Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you." Kemper was remarkably energetic and successful in his ministry, starting churches all over the Midwest and out into Nebraska and Kansas. But the key to his success wasn't just his energy or administrative skills, which were considerable. It was his passion for the gospel. The thing is, he took the Great Commission literally. He went out into the wilderness to share his faith with others, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And as we look at Jesus' final words to his disciples, we see that the Christian faith has, as part of its operating system, an outward thrust. Faith is deeply personal, yes, but it can never remain an entirely private affair. Jesus bids us to share our faith with others, to invite others to experience the transforming power of God's love. And that's not just the responsibility of bishops or professional Christians. I love Kemper's story because it's a reminder that we are all charged with sharing God's love with the world. We are all invited into the Great Commission. So how does this all relate to Trinity Sunday, which we mark today? Well, the Trinity is ultimately about our embodied relationship with the divine. The Trinity is a relational reality, not a remote doctrine. On Trinity Sunday, we sing some great hymns, maybe say the Nicene Creed, that great statement of Trinitarian faith, with a bit more fervor, and celebrate the mystery of God in three persons. But again, our Trinitarian faith must be relational. Jackson Kemper rolled up his sleeves and got right into the thick of God's creation to share the good news of the fullness of God with everyone he encountered. Now, it's true that through the centuries, theologians have written hundreds of thousands of pages about the doctrine of the Trinity. And all of those pages merely hint at the fullness of God. You can't explain the unexplainable or know the unknowable. You certainly can't unlock the mystery of the triune God in a 10 to 12 minute sermon. And no preacher should even try. And yes, I'm aware that everyone is now timing this sermon. But what we can do is point to God's hand at work in our own lives. We can glorify the God who wonderfully created us in God's own image and yet more wonderfully restored the dignity of every human being. We can celebrate the transcendence of God in this soaring Gothic church, even as we encounter the immanence of God in the fellowship of the worshiping community. The miracle of the Trinity is not to be found in sermons or the dusty pages of a theological treatise, but in our relationship with the God who walks with us through hardship and joy, through suffering and celebration. And we can trace that relationship through the story of creation in Genesis, to the commissioning of the first disciples, to the ways that God is actively working in our own lives. And make no mistake about it, God is actively working in your life in ways both seen and unseen, calling you to new experiences of ministry, drawing you to unexpected spiritual insights, inviting you into deeper relationship, challenging you to move beyond your comfort zone, offering you opportunities to serve others. And when you reflect upon the ways that God is working in and through you, you are engaging with the Trinity. Whether that's in a quiet moment of contemplation or up at the communion rail or serving those in need, you are engaging with the Trinity. It is the Trinity that animates our very being, brings comfort to our weary souls, and inspires us to put our faith into action. It was the movement of the Trinity that fueled Jackson Kemper's missionary zeal and love of the Lord out on the western frontier. And I believe we need to capture that same sense of urgency when it comes to sharing the good news of Jesus Christ in our own day and in our own way. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, I think the answer to the question of why we should do that is rooted in the very first word of the Great Commission, which is go. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations. Go, therefore, and love one another. Go, therefore, and respect the dignity of every human being. Go, therefore, and tear down the walls that divide us. Go, therefore, and work for justice and peace. Go, therefore, and share your faith with others. The life of faith, then, is active, not passive. It's no great newsflash that people these days are feeling less connected to institutions, especially faith communities. I don't think this is because there isn't a deep need for spiritual connection. There clearly is. But I do think it's because as a church, we've lost our nerve. We've lost our collective ability to share our faith with others, to invite others to come and see the joy that faith brings to our lives. But I also think both the Episcopal Church in general and Bethesda in particular have so much to offer in this moment. We have beautiful liturgy and music, a campus that serves as a spiritual oasis to a broken and hurting world, a message of hope and love and inclusion. The thing is, like Jackson Kemper, we already have everything we need to renew the church and keep it thriving. We have bread and wine and water. We have the Bible. We have the Book of Common Prayer. We have one another. Yes, Stuart, we also have the hymnal. We just need to share all of these things, to invite others to come and see what God is doing in this place. As a church, broadly speaking, we can't just circle the wagons. We have to get out to the frontier and boldly communicate the gospel of Jesus Christ to the world. And thanks to the power of God as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, together we are equipped to do just this. And we will do this. Go, therefore, and be God's people in the world.